Runsus Day from a sunny and humid Siem Reap in Cambodia. This is Binman. This is the Stats File Preview podcast. I'm previewing the upcoming game against the Richmond Tigers this Sunday afternoon, 3:15 at the MCG. Before I go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the Khmer people, or Khmer as it's pronounced here, as the traditional custodians of Siem Reap, where I'm recording this, and the historic Angkor region. I pay my respects to their ancestors, elders, and current generations who have preserved the cultural, spiritual, and physical heritage of this land for centuries. Beautiful part of the world. My holiday's coming to an end. Fly out Saturday morning. So we'll get to the G on Sunday. It'll be a bit different weather conditions, which I'll get into. So I'm going to jump straight into this week's preview pod. So the first thing in terms to look at the team ratings for both of these teams. It's our rating overall is +9. Their rating, unsurprisingly, though this is a pretty poor rating, one must say, is -33.7. The team lineups, the average age is actually a bit of a concern for Richmond, I would have thought, and shows where rebuild versus, I guess, the approach we've done a rebuild on the run, so to speak, and the challenges Tigers face, which I'll touch on with their injuries in a little bit about a rebuild. But the average age for both teams, Melbourne is 25.6. This is the squad, so the average age across the squad, I will say we've got Tom McDonald in, that's included in that, so that sort of pumps that up a little bit. So it might come down even a little bit. If Tom McDonald doesn't play, we might end up actually being a younger side on average than the Tigers, who are 25.3 years of age, their average age across the squad that's been announced. Average matches across the squad is 97.8 for the Ds, 87.2 for the Tigers. And again, that's interesting in terms of Tom McDonald is taken out of that. That's 250 games. So, I don't know what the math on that is. So it would probably come down to, 93 or 94 or something. So a bit dispiriting, I would have thought, for the Tigers, in the sense that, there's not a huge amount of difference between the two teams, and the poor old Tigers are caught in rebound hell at the moment. So tough going for them. Head-to-head record, all-time head-to-head record is 89-108. At the venue, at the G, of course, 69 games we've won. They've won 74. As I've said every week, let's get one in our column, in the win column, and get one back. I'm guessing the rest of the games, maybe there's a few draws mixed in there, and I don't know where the other games might be. Punt Road, I'm guessing. So that's one ground that I never got to see a game of footy at Punt Road. Not a VFL game not a VFL game. So, yeah, our record in the last a little while, though, we've won the last 7 games between these two clubs. And funnily enough, they won the 3 before that. So the last 10 games, it's 7-3, but we have won the last 7 games. In terms of recent form, of course, the Ds had a fantastic win down at York Park in Tasmania and Launceston last week, 125-90. Much discussed first half versus the second half. We lost the heartbreaker to Adelaide, a game we could have easily won, but I guess to say it was 24 scoring shots to 17. So it's hard to argue that they weren't deserving winners in that game. We won the game before that, 95-50 against the Bombers. This one I love. We beat the Pies previous week, King's birthday, and then we lost at the Alice before that to the Giants, 70-119. Whereas Richmond have lost their last 5 games, and I think it's actually 7 in a row that they've lost now from memory. So the heartbreaker for them last week, they came storming home 72-74 to get beaten by the Blues. The Pies rolled them the week before that. North Melbourne rolled them the week before that. Then the Lions before that. And then they got completely towed up by the Sydney Swans, 170-56 the week before that. So, yeah, they're in struggle time, that is for sure. Selection. was going to record this morning, my time, but I thought I'd wait till the selections dropped. So squads only because it's a Sunday game. So the outs coming into the squads, into the Tigers squad: Prestia, Sam Grillage, Burton and Ryan. Ross is out with concussion, which is a big blow for them, actually, I think, because he was in pretty good form and he's a bit of a barometer. Into the squad for us comes Tommy McDonald, Paddy Cross, Aidan Johnson. What do I think that might look like in the end? My feeling is probably the only likely out is Fitzgerald, replaced by Cross, in which case Windsor hopefully goes back on the ball. I suspect he wasn't last week. He only took one CBA last week. I suspect he wasn't on the ball last week because of perhaps his toe isn't quite right yet. I expect just the one change, Cross. Although Cross for Fitzgerald, though I did see a poster on Damon Landis, right, that maybe Tommy McDonald might come in for Fitzgerald, and Tom McDonald would be a good matchup for Tom Lynch. That's probably true. So they're probably the two options, though I think we'll be looking to get Paddy Cross's run back into the side is my sense. So the betting, we've tightened on the back of the announcement of the ins and outs, or at least in the squad. $1.10, that's really, really short. $1.10 to the Tigers, $7.50. The weather, it's 13 degrees on Sunday, certainly different to the 33 degrees it's going to be here in Seam Reap. 13 degrees, 25 to 35 kilometre winds they're expecting, so a touch swirly as can be the case at the G when the wind gets up. It can sort of swirl around in the cauldron of the G. Up to 5 millimetres of rain is forecast from the morning into the Arvo, so hopefully that will clear up by 3:15 when the game starts. Looking at injury, the injury list for the Tigers is slowly improving after a horror run this season. Horror run, to be fair, for the last 2 or 3 seasons, not including tests. They have 8 on their injury list. 5 of whom, perhaps 6, depending on how you measure this up, are best 23. So their best 23 players, or at least 5 of them, they're young guns. Laylaw, it's a really heartbreaker for him not being able to get on the field this year as much as, of course, the Tigers would like. Smiley, who hasn't played a game of AFL football, which I was shocked. I've got to check that if that's right, actually. Gibcus is also out, and then Hooper and Jonty Fall. Jonty Fall, best 23, I'm not sure. But yeah, so let's say he is, for the sake of arguments, Laylaw, Smiley. Well, you'd hope Smiley is, but he's a young player. Gibcus, Hooper and Jonty Fall. Our best 23 is looking much, much better, our injury list, I have to say, so not including tests. Of our best 23, Viney, Myercheck, Cully, Lindsay, and AMW, if you include him, but perhaps you don't. Coming off 2 ACLs, it's going to be hard work for him to get back into the best 23 next year. So, if we leave AMW out of it, that's 4 of our best 23 out. So sort of roughly level if you compare the 2 teams. So we've got a bit more experience out in Viney and Mycheck, obviously, and Lindsay, a young gun who's played more games than Smiley. I'm not sure how many Gibcus has played, but he's probably played more than Gibcus as well. Just a quick comment on injury. It's the biggest determinant in footy. It's much overlooked. Whilst the Tigers' injury rows haven't been quite as disastrous this year as that of the Bombers, it's still been a horror show really for them. It's been terrible, and really a horror show over the last 3 seasons. I feel really, bad for Uze, who always loved at the Ds, always loved him. Also, his time as a coach and player at the Ds, he's had a really tough run, tough gig as coach of the Tigers. The Tigers have fielded 39 different players this season. That's crazy. That's hard to get any rhythm into a team, particularly a young team. So really tough stuff for them. Their number 1 draft pick, their prize number 1 draft pick, Sam Laylaw, he's been restricted to just 18 games in his 2 seasons, this is his 2nd season at the Tigers. fellow 24 first round pick Josh Smiley is yet to make his AFL debut. I'm pretty sure that's right, as he battles ongoing quad issues, and that's terrible for them. But it's so important to get games into these young players, even if they aren't sort of fully wound up. And I mentioned we talked about Windsor on the podcast with George on Monday on the Demon Land podcast. And the question was raised, Windsor looks perhaps that he's carrying something. Why would you play him if that's the case? And I think really the key is to get games into him. And it was good to see that Windsor was selected this week. He wasn't one of the interchanges. I know that doesn't always, he's selected in the main team. That doesn't always, it's not like a hard and fast rule, but more often than not, that's the case. So you'd expect him to be playing this week, Windsor. Really hard to get for the Tigers to get a rebuild going with that sort of quality young talent not playing together, not being able to learn the systems, not being able to get AFL experience. And on the back of all of that, this week I read that the Tigers, they just Ben Serpel, who's their manager of their high performance program, has been is left to take up another opportunity. I read that has been sacked. So he only joined the Tigers in the after the 24 season, so he's only in his second season. So perhaps on the back of those injuries, that they've not been able to turn around that injury toll, and that's obviously hampered their rebuild. As I said before, I don't know how much. I don't know their injury sort of profile well enough to know how fair it is to put it at the feet of the high performance manager. Nonetheless, he's departed the club. Uze said with that so he's battled availability, who's, as I mentioned, in all three of his seasons in charge. He was quoted as saying he refuses to use injuries as an excuse, but he's won just 10 of his 63 games so far as a Tigers coach. That's a pretty dispiriting start for his AFL career, and as I said, I'd love to see him do well. He was quoted as saying this week on the back of Serpel leaving the club, meaning injuries, affects it a little bit, but you lose a soldier and you replace the soldier. He said after Saturday night's 2-point loss against Carlton, actually it was before Serpel was announced that he'd leaving the club. But we want to play the same way. We expect to play the same way with the ball, and we want to be playing an attacking brand of footy that our Tiger Army really enjoy watching. That may be the case, but, I'm not a big fan of that soldier out, soldier in palaver. Perhaps it's, okay for the coach, but I think, surely we're moving on past that because, you can't replace a lay law. It doesn't matter what your soldier is. It's like, it's like, if you're going to use that analogy, it's like replacing a SAS soldier with a new recruit into the army. So really tough going for them, and it's no wonder they're struggling. I think they're bottom of the ladder. They've won 2 games. Their percentage is 63, something like that, which is less than the percentage of Essendon, who've have lost one more game. So they've only won the one game, the Bombers, and their percentage is still better than the Tigers, who are more to the bottom of the ladder, the 17th, and their percentage is poor, and they've only won the 2 games this year. So really, really tough game, tough season for them. And hopefully for Uza's sake and the Tiger Army's sake, and the injury situation will improve. It's looking a little bit better. Laylaw back in 2 or 3 weeks, I think they're hoping. Just a quick sort of review, as mentioned last week, the Hawthorn game was the first time that I was able to preview a game when we played them previously. This feels like it's a proper break between the games. It felt like I was previewing the first Hawks game just a few weeks ago. So it was round 10, I think. And this one was, way back on Anzac Eve, so much bigger separation. But how things have changed. In that game, we won. We had 11 individual goal scorers in the Anzac Eve round, winning 9-12, 126 to 11-6-72. That scoreboard sort of not flattered us, but Richmond really ran out of legs in that last quarter, hit the wall, and we blew them out in that last quarter. Much different, obviously, to what happened in the game down at Tasmania last week. We really sort of got on our bike in that last quarter. their fitness issues looked really apparent. So perhaps it's no surprise that Serpil has moved on looking for other opportunities in that game, because that was early on the season and they ran out of legs, where we ran through the line in that game and ended up winning by 56 points. From memory, it was pretty close at three-quarter time, and they were pretty good up till that point. And so they were competitive through the game. They were, their numbers were pretty good in terms of the contests, the clearances, another number of key metrics. But it all came crashing down in that last quarter. In that game, Cozzy was awesome, as was Steele, fantastic. The heartbreak in that game was losing quality Cully to what looked like the classic ACL sort of change of direction. When I watched the replay and not so much live, I couldn't tell what happened live, but sadly that proved to be the case. Hopefully he's tracking well with his rehab and back as soon as we can get him back on the field. It wasn't all doom and gloom, as I said, for Richmond. The list was full of youth, good experience. They took it up to us for all but the final quarter when the sting had come from the game and we really got on top. But before that, they kicked 2 of the first 3 goals of the match. They led at times during the second term, and their contest and effort, as I said, was commendable for the first 3 quarters before hitting the wall in the last quarter when we blew them out. But yes, how things have changed, as I said. So, thinking about that game is we were 2 teams that were, I guess considered by many, not by me, I have to say, but considered by many in the football media world and also many fans to be potentially competing for the same spot on the ladder. So more of a peer. At best, perhaps competing for the 10th place, 9th place in the wildcard round. If a week's a long time in footy, 10 weeks, which is how long since we played them, is an eternity, and things look a lot different now for both clubs. Hope's gone from Richmond, and the hope still burns brightly for the Mighty D's. Just some caveats for that game. The round, it was a round 4 game against at the Anzac Eve game. It was a 5-day break for both teams, so that partly explains them hitting the wall. There was excellent effort for us not to. 12 of the Tigers' best 23 were not playing in that game, so that was definitely a factor in the victory for us. It was a blowout in the last. But Uze made the point in his presser that he thought their contest was pretty good. He said their focus pre-game was winning the contest and stoppages, and he noted that they largely did that for the first 3 quarters, but they just didn't have the legs to run that game out, which was a bit of a concern. And I mentioned that at the time in the review on the Demon Lad podcast, that if I was Tigers fans, notwithstanding having 12 of their best 23 not playing, the way that they struggled to run the game out, even on the 5-day break, maybe that's being a bit unfair on them. For me, it was a little bit of a red flag in terms of where their fitness was at. So just a quick look at some of the key differentials in terms of the stats. It's not surprising. We have them covered for all of them. Overall, I can't recall now if I said this, overall our rating is 9. Their rating is, I did say this, minus 33. But of that attacking rating, our attacking rating is plus 7.2. Their attacking rating is minus 20.2. Our defensive rating, which is steadily improving, it's been terrific. It was, from memory, it was in the negative 4 or 5 weeks ago. It's now in the positive plus 1.8, and we're slowly creeping towards that premiership window, which that is often talked about on 360, top 6 in defence, top 6 in attacking, in offence. So they're negative 13.5, and that's reflected in the attacking scores and defending scores. So we're averaging 97.2 points a game. They're only averaging a woeful 66.2 points a game. That's a huge differential, 33 points. Defensively, we're giving up 91.4. After round 10 or 11, it was over 100. So we've really brought that down. They're giving up 104.5. So that's a massive 13-point gap between us in terms of our ability to defend, score. But no surprise, on all of the other metrics, we've got them covered. Some of the highlights from a Melbourne's perspective, are lowlights from the Tigers' perspective. Points from turnover, we're averaging 53 points from turnover this season. They're averaging only 34.9. Points from stoppages, 39.9. They're only averaging 27.6. We're moving the ball better from the back half. We're having way more inside 50s, 57.7 per game to their 47. That's 10 more. 10.5 more inside 50s per game, which is just huge. We're having 8 more shots than them per game. Scores for inside 50, 44.4% of the time to their 40. It's not bad for them, actually, but it's no good if it's 40% of bugger all going inside 50, I guess. And they're conceding 59.6 on turnover. We're conceding 51.6, which is probably a little bit high for Kings' liking, but that is coming down. And all of the other defensive stats are similar. Probably the one that jumps out is points from stoppage. They're giving up 40 points per game. We're giving up 36.4 points per game. So pretty sort of stark difference in the two teams in terms of all of those key stats and all of those key areas. Our top our top-rated players this season are Gorney, Cos, Kay Chandler, and I've got to get this right here. Whereas, let's have a look. Rating. So our top 5 rated players are Gorney, 18.9, Cozzy Pickett, 16.5, and it's interesting. Cozzy's really he was up in the 17s 3 matches ago. He's been quiet for the last 2-3 matches and really dropped away in that second half against the Hawks. Hopefully he sort of gets back to his very best form. Kate Chandler is our 3rd highest rated player, 14.2. Jack Steele, 13.1. What a terrific recruit. Tommy Sparrow, let's hope he stays at the club. He rounds out our top 5, then Bowie, Trent, Rivers, and Fritter, who's having a great season for them. And I'll just make sure I've got the right rating here. So for them, not surprising in terms of where the two teams are at. That their top rated player is Toby Nankervis with only 13.5. Our ruckman is our highest rated player. He's 18.9. That's a big gap between the two highest rated players. Tim Taranto is their 2nd highest. Jack Ross, Seth Campbell, Sam Laylor, who's not on the park at the moment, Ryan Mansell, who is in the park, and then Noah Bolter. So, they haven't got any players rated above 15, which is, that probably sums it up where they're at in terms of, their list at the moment, but also their injuries, I've got to say. So I think the key players in this game for the opposition, for them, for us, I think it's a given our top-rated players, our key players are often going to be the ones I read before, but Maxi, Cozzy, Chin, increasingly Roo, who was just awesome last week, his best game for the Melbourne Footy Club, his best AFL game. Obviously, all of them have been for the Ds, just terrific. But for the, I think their key players in this match are Nankervis. It's a sort of obvious one in terms of his ability to negate Maxi's influence. I've always thought he's a bit of an underrated ruckman. If Maxi does struggle against any ruckman, it's the stronger ones who can physically go with him, but Nank can't go with him running wise, though he's a really super hard worker, but I think he's really important to at least do his best to get close to breaking even to Maxi. Generational player Maxi is. Seth Campbell's a really important one, I think. He's sort of he's moved into the midfield after being a small forward. He's a bit of a barometer player. He brings pace and pressure to both roles, forward and back. He's only 21. He had spark, whether he's playing near goal or higher up the ground. He was a key reason for the Tigers' fight back against the Blues last week. He had 17 disposals, 4 clearances, and had 2 goals. Taranto, is a key a player as well, just in terms of matching us in the midfield. So, as I said before, he's their 2nd highest rated player on their list. He's averaging 80.3% time on ground, and he's getting 23 disposals a game. Though his efficiency is pretty woeful, 66.4. Not a huge sort of rap on that particular stat, but nonetheless, it sort of speaks to he's a bit of a butcher. I think the Bolter I thought he, not so much key, but he is a player. I'm hoping very much that the umpires do not allow him to go hard and attack Maxi the way he did in the previous round. You might remember he put his knee flat in Maxi's back in the first quarter, and that was, just I thought, deliberate effort to hurt Maxi, and it did. He was struggled for the rest of that game, Maxi. So he's key only from the perspective that he's a thug and hopefully he stays away from Maxi. Lynch, if you're a Tigers fan, you'd hope that Lynch would be a key player in this game, but he's one game back from a larynx injury. It's difficult to see him. I feel like it. Feels like it to me. He's shot a bit, and it's difficult to see him getting anywhere near back to his best on his return in that last week. At the grand total, I think he had 8 disposals, grand total of 1 behind and 2 kicks. Out on the full from his scoring attempts in a game where they lost by 2 points. They really needed him to stand up, and he didn't. So. Keys to winning in this game, I think that the keys to winning, I'll put an asterisk. I think we just should win this game. But nonetheless, keys to winning, win the contest and pressure. Mentioned it last week that contest and pressure is undefeated. It really is the most sort of important phase or part of footy, I think. And so last time so these numbers are a little bit inflated by our last quarter blowout because, as I said, they were fairly level at 3/4 time for most of these. But nonetheless, if you look at the context for the full game and don't discount that last quarter, winning the contest and pressure is key to winning this game. And last time it was as well. We were plus 21 for contested possessions in our round 4 game against them, plus 10 for post-clearance contested possession. We're plus 7 for post-clearance ground ball gets. We're only plus 3 for pressure, 177 to 174, but it's worth noting that was inflated by us being plus 14 in the last quarter when they hit the wall, as I said, and we rolled over the top of them. So before that, they were in fact in front of us in terms of the pressure. Interestingly, we're also minus 6 for ground ball gets in that game. That's an area we've improved on heaps in the last 6-7 weeks. When we've been playing, dare I say it, a very, very good one, certainly in the 21 to 24 period, a very good one, like high pressure, strong at the contest, forward half game, and trapping it inside 50 and making it difficult for the opposition to transition it out from there, which was how the Hawks game rolled as well. And that was something I got wrong last week. I was thinking we would definitely have a higher sort of ping-pong, higher transition game. I think we did a great job of taking that away from Hawthorn. And as I mentioned on the preview last week, that we would look to at least look to minimise the Hawks' ability to get out the back and have Gunston isolated. And we did a terrific job doing that, at least until the game in that last quarter when our pressure fell away. In that game, another interesting stat was how many contested marks were taken. We took 15, they took 12, so 27 contested marks in that game. For context, AFL average for contested marks is 9 per team, so 18 in a game. So, that's 27. That's well and truly over AFL average for contested marks. Contest and pressure remains undefeated, as I said. We're 6 for contested possessions. We're 6 for winning ball equity points. We're well on top in that space. Their metrics around all of these are really low. So it's really no surprise given the struggles that they're having to getting their best 23 on the park. I think winning, generally most weeks winning the clearance and stoppage battle and totals from just the totals and the scores from the clearance and stoppage battle is critical most weeks, but I don't think so in this game. Against the best teams, it's critical, but I just don't think it is in this match because assuming we tick off the other keys to winning, I think we'll win this game even if they match us in this space, which they did for the first 3 quarters of our previous encounter, as I said. evidencing that. I kept on saying round 4, it was round 7, the Anzac Eve game, evidencing that we were only +6 for total clearances in that game, yet we won by 50 odd points, +7 from centre clearances, but only we were -1 from stoppage clearances. So overall, +6. So that's far from a smashing, given it's been a real strength for us all season. Our clearance works, and we're only +3 from scores from centre clearances. We're only +9 for scores from around the ground stoppages. So hardly a mauling, both in terms of the total number of clearances, centre clearances and around the ground clearances, and scores from those sources. So hardly a mauling in what is our one wood. We've got Maxi playing. We had Heath playing in that round. It's interesting he's not playing this week. So they were pretty competitive. They matched us pretty well in that space, yet we still won by 50 points. I think critical will absolutely be winning the scores from turnover. In our round 7 Anzac Eve game, we were +35 from scores from turnover. It was probably the 59 points to 34. It was, +25, I should say. It was the deciding factor in the game, I think. And so, I think that I think this will be key in this game. Taking Uz at his word in his post-match presser, they, in talking about their injuries, the Tigers he wants the Tigers to continue to play an attacking brand of footy. So I hope they do. That carries a lot of risks, and the more risks you take, the greater the risk of the turnover. Given they've got quality players not playing, best 23 players out, turnovers and clangers will be inevitable. If we can punish those turnovers, we'll win this game easily. If we're looking at +25, +30 from scores from turnover, we'll well and truly win this game comfortably. I think another area that I hope to see that will really stress test their defence. Last week, it was an interesting game. I didn't really see any of it. I just caught a couple of highlights, but I happened to listen to the last few minutes, and the Tigers got into that game. They only went down by 2 points. So, I guess many would say that's a commendable performance. I didn't really see enough of the game to get a sense of, how strong the standard was. But George said on the Demonland podcast on Monday it was a pretty rubbish game of footy. And from the AFL.com match report, it said, so keeping in mind they only lost by 2 points. Too often did Richmond's defensive structure break down, creating opportunities for Carlton to move the ball around the arc and generate marks in dangerous positions. Losing their direct opponents and getting drawn into no man's land, the Tigers allowed Carlton to take 17 marks inside 50 for the game. That's a lot of marks inside 50 for the game. I think AFL average is probably something like 12. And King, will of course reviewed that game thoroughly, and on the wide expenses of our fortress, the MCG, I think it's likely we'll look to exploit that defensive weakness and perhaps do something similar that the Blues did and really stretch their defensive systems. And I think when you can't get a settled side in, your defensive systems are the ones that are most likely to, struggle, because so much it depends on knowing intuitively where your teammates are, your teammates coming off and third man in, doing all of those things. And it looks like the Blues really sort of look to exploit that lack of defensive cohesiveness and structural issues. I expect that we'll do the same. If we successfully do that, look for similarly high numbers of marks inside 50, which everyone loves to see. So I think that stress testing their defence will be key. And finally, I think the other key is, we really should win this game. $1.10 is about right, and the odds I mentioned before. We are, the bottom line is we are a top 6 side. I think we're a chance at finishing top 4. They're a side that is in a world of pain. They're 17th on the ladder in struggle town. So I think key will be not giving them a sniff at all, not even getting close to, not allowing them any sense of, energy, taking the crowd out of it, getting a lead early, and really sort of smashing them early and never giving them a sniff. Take our chances, particularly early on, get a lead, and then sort of go from there. So a summary, a prediction. Danger game? I don't think so. I think we've moved beyond playing a team that's 17th of only won 2 games, being a danger game. We are a lot better team than that. As I've talked about, the ladder does not lie. before, when all teams haven't had a bye, it might tell some fibs, but all teams have had a bye now, so it does not lie. We're coming into round 18. We're 6 on the ladder, 40 points, equal with the Lions, who are 40 points as well, who are third on the ladder. And so, we're going to be too good for the Tigers. So I don't think this is a danger game. And I can't see a world in which we go into this game overconfident or not thinking about it, which doesn't mean that it's not critical. It's just totally critical we get the 4 points. So, for me, in terms of thinking about the game, there's, I think that, I guess, framing sort of my thoughts are, loading or not to loading. That's the question. And that's what Shakespeare would have said all those years ago when he was doing his podcast analysis of the upcoming performances at the theatre. Jimmy Bartell and James Hurd do a show with a fellow called James Vallance it's called The Furnace. It's an online show. I'm actually not sure who makes it, but Vallance is a sports bet talent. So he's normally racing. So maybe it's a sports bet. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's quite good. It's really cheap production values, but it's excellent. And I just watched yesterday this week's episode, and it was a preview of the weekend, and finally heard a footy media person, Jimmy Bartell, who I really, really like. He doesn't talk nonsense, and he tells it like it is. I finally heard a footy media person, Jimmy, unequivocally, without using euphemisms, discuss the impact of what he called in-season loading phases. The in-season loading phases teams do, and discussing the impact that has on individual performances, vis-a-vis how to get a sense of how teams are travelling and the likelihood at this point of the season who the real contenders are. And he mentioned, you can't. There's the loading creates a challenge to work out where teams are at. No coincidence that's not on Fox 7 or SEN. And I wrote on Binman that perhaps just maybe the media and footy fans might start analysing, thinking about, talking about the game like it's 2026, not 2006. For example, I've not heard one footy media person ask to me what the obvious question is, as I talked about on the Demon Lad pod about the Hawks' performance against us, which is, were they in a heavy loading phase? Now, they may not have been, but I think they were. I mean, you could see with your eyes from the jump that they didn't have their usual zip. But maybe they weren't. Maybe I'm over-egging the pudding, but not to at least ask the question, I think, means that any analysis has got a gaping big hole in it. And as an example of why it's so stupid not to at least raise it as a possible factor, or how unhelpful it is for people to help to understand the game. Prior to the Furnace, I happened to watch a clip of Lewis on the couch talking about Sicily's performance, and he showed heaps of clips, or 3 or 4 clips, to highlight how lackluster and off the pace Sicily was, and says, it periodically happens every year. He'll have 2 or 3 such games. Now, sure, loading may not have been a factor, though to my eye, like many of his teammates, he looked fatigued from the get-go, and the vision that Lewis showed indicated that. So if to not at least consider, that they might have done a heavy loading, heavy training block before that game as a potential factor to explain his evident fatigue and lackluster performance, you're left with the conclusion that the panel landed on, which that he was not mentally switched on for that game, which may well have been true, but 2 things can be possible at once. He not mentally switched on and fatigued, and maybe the sort of question I would have is, perhaps, is there a chance that the challenge with that is that maybe he's not mentally switched on after he's done a heavy block of training, and he needs to look at that. Buck Naked on Demonland wrote the following: suggest if we are on our last major training block for the year, we might be a bit flat, which, by the by, was George's thoughts on the Demonland pod on Monday. If so, we'll get a lead and then play keepings off from there. If we've done our training block, we may use this game to rattle the dust out of our system and see lots of overlap running handball and heaps of handball meters gained. Either way, we should be comfortable getting over the Tigers, which I agree with, to which I replied, my take exactly. I'm probably leaning towards the former, i.e. build a lead north of 5 goals and then go into control mode in the second half. I'm hoping for the latter. One, it's more fun to watch, and two, the post-match thread on Binman won't be full of the "won't someone think of the percentage hand-wringing" palaver. Finally, I'm just going to wrap it up. So that's it for the preview of that game. I'll be going along. It will be a bit of both probably a culture shock, but a weather shock, at least on Sunday. Just wanted to touch on quickly Colm in the Stats File podcast thread on Demon Land posed a question a few weeks back that I thought I'd touch on. It was about the chances of winning the flag, our chances of winning flag compared to historical sort of precedents. What I thought I'd do is look at the Brisbane Lions, who have been the most successful club in the last, certainly in the last 3 years. They obviously made a grand final and won the last two in the last 3 years. So I thought I'd pick round 16. By round 16, the ladder doesn't lie. I picked that because that's the bye. The sample size is more than big enough at this point in the season, to accurately assess all teams, save quirks in the fixture such as that of the Crows, who get a dream run from here, it must be said, and factor that into their chances of finishing top four. But I'm of the view that there's a clear trend that it's developing in the last 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8, 9, 10 years, that is 100% fitness and high performance related, of teams muddling along to about round 15, 16, around this stage of the season before hitting their straps. And I guess, for me, when I say teams, I really mean the Lions. Teams generally ape the premiers and follow the lead of the premiers. And it's funny with the Lions because the sort of template for footy has become this high movement, high handball meters gain, running in waves, less of the control that the Lions like to use. I think that's more related to just how good the Lions list is in terms of the skill of their players to be able to hit those targets the way they do and move the ball forward by foot. But where I think that teams are obviously, looking at the Lions is in the high performance space, and looking to model the high performance program planning and strategy around the way the Lions have so successfully done it in the last 3 seasons. So in 23, 24 and 25, the Lions were roughly in the same position as we were ahead of our round 16 bye. Whilst the Lions have been a bit hit and miss this season, they are again following much the same pattern as they have done for the last 3 seasons, which has seen them make 3 grand finals and win the last 2. At the end of round 15, they were on 40 points in 2023. They were on 30 points in 2024. Better in 25, they were 42 points at the end of round 15 in 2025. This season, they were on 32 points at the end of round 15. They've won their last 2 games, mauling the Swans and the Cats to once again be a clear premiership threat. In fact, I have them as my premiership favourites. And so, they're following a very similar pattern as they have this year, which is why I think they're an obvious premiership threat. Coming into the bye after our round 15, so comparing where we're at in terms of the Lions, we're on 36 points. So, better than the Lions were in 24 when they won the flag. Almost equivalent to where they were in 23 when the Lions were unlucky not to win the flag, and 2 games behind where the Lions were in 2025. In all of those years, 23, 24 and 25, perhaps less so, or much less so in 25, questions were being asked about the Lions in round 15, and again, they were being asked this year. But, each year from that point, they went bang. And each year you could see come the grand final, they were super cut, super fit. I've said this a number of times on the podcasts, that if you look at images of how they looked physically on grand final day, they looked leaner, they looked fitter. And that's how those grand finals played out. They were fitter than, I thought they were fitter than the Pies in 23 as well. And so I think that, they're getting, it's no coincidence that they look like they're getting rolling again. As I mentioned, they just completely smashed the Swans, completely smashed the Cats. I think they're a top 4 lock. But I would not be surprised at all if we're following a similar pattern, at least in terms of the high performance aspect of that. As I mentioned, I think the Lions are a top 4 lock. They're my favourite to win the flag. The Swans and Freo's form notwithstanding, that'll be a great game tonight. But with Freo and Swans both locked in top 4, if you accept that Lions are top 4 lock, there's only one spot in the top 4. I think we're really, really big, well and truly a big show of taking that spot and making top 4. My take is our big threats for top 4 are the Crows, Hawks and Cats. I've got question marks over the Hawks. We've got their measure. We've beaten them twice this season. 11 out of 13 times. We've got a really good run home. If we get a good run with injury, I think that Hawks is slightly harder, but they've got a pretty good run home too. But I think we're got the measure of the Crows and the Cats too. So I think we're a huge chance of making top 4. How good would that be? Only problem is if we finish 4th, good chance we'll play either the Swans or Freo away. So and no team has won the flag from 4th. So there is an argument to say that it might even be better to finish 5th. I've heard that said, but you get double chance for top 4. No team having won it from 4th in 25 years. It's got to be based, I think, logically that first place 4th and you lose and you win the qualifying and then lose in the prelim. That seems to be the pattern. So, but I think the wild card round throws all of that into a flux this year in terms of the historical antecedents around that stuff. But we're in really good shape, really, is the point I'm wanting to make, and not dissimilar to where the Lions were at. It's clear that King has put a huge emphasis on athletic profile. We are up and about fitness-wise. So that's where we're at. I'm really looking forward to the game this week. I think we'll win. I think, my sense is that the most likely scenario is that we'll, look to do what we did against the Hawks, essentially. George is probably right. Buck Necked's probably right as well. It would be logical to have loaded up before either strength and aerobic or both ahead of this game, with the sort of calculated risk that we're playing them. And so if that's the case, then hopefully we'll get to a good lead, 40, 50-point lead, 35-point lead, and maintain it. If we win by 6 goals, as I said on the Demonland podcast the other night on Monday night, that's fine by me. Bank the 4 points. But, obviously cue the whole Demonland meltdown about percentage and all of that. So I will speak to you all on the podcast with George. One more show before Andy comes back on board. That will be Monday, following our game on Sunday at the MCG. And I'll be back for the Binman Statfile preview podcast for preview our game against the Roos the following week and at Marvel game that I'm really looking forward to previewing, actually, and looking at where the Roos are at. Have a good game at the G, and I will speak to you soon. Go Red Leggers!
It's a grand old flag, it's a high-flying flag, it's an emblem for me and for you. Well, it's the emblem of the team we love, the team of the red and the blue. Well, every heart beats true for the red and the blue, as we sing a song for you. Should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the red and the blue. Where the team played fine in the year 39, we're the team that no one can lick. And you'll find us there after the final bell with the spirit of 1926. Every heart beats true for the red and the blue, as we sing this song to you. Should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye